It was a seemingly ordinary day in high school, until my USB drive became the center of an unexpected and absurdly dramatic incident. I haven't got a clue that one day Karen teacher will confiscate my USB drive, thinking it's a knife. Here's how it all went down. High school, the intense battleground where teenagers navigate the intricate web of academics and social drama, can be a real roller coaster. Add a teacher like Karen to the mix, and you've got a concoction of rules and rigidity that can turn any ordinary day into a whirlwind of chaos. My unexpected clash with Karen unfolded during a seemingly routine computer class, where my mundane USB drive would become the focal point of an absurdly dramatic incident. The day began innocently enough. A group project in the works, I needed to transfer files from my trusty USB drive, a sleek black device with a hint of neon green. Little did I know this seemingly unassuming gadget would become the epicenter of a storm about to be unleashed by Karen. As I inserted it into the computer, Karen swooped in, her presence akin to a hawk spotting its prey. "What's that?" Karen's eyes narrowed at my innocent USB drive. "It's just my flash drive, Karen. I need it for the project," I replied, attempting to maintain a casual demeanor. She stared at me, unimpressed. "I'll be the judge of that," she declared, snatching the USB drive from my hands as if I had handed her a venomous snake. As she examined it, her eyes widened with alarm. "He's holding a knife!" she shrieked, her voice reverberating through the computer lab. The class fell into an awkward silence, and every pair of eyes turned to me, a mix of confusion and concern etched on their faces. Rolling my eyes, I attempted to keep my cool. "It's not a knife, Karen. It's a USB drive, like I said," I explained, hoping to defuse the situation. Karen was having none of it. She brandished my USB drive like a weapon, her face flushed with righteous indignation. "I won't allow weapons in my classroom. You're a danger to this school." In no time, she was marching me to the principal's office, USB drive in hand, treating it as if it were a ticking time bomb. Mr. Johnson, the principal, listened to Karen's tale with a furrowed brow. "He brought a knife to class, Mr. Johnson. I caught him before something terrible happened," Karen exclaimed, eyes wide with exaggerated concern. I attempted to defend myself, but Karen's narrative had already cast me as a potential school threat. Mr. Johnson sighed, looking at me sternly. "I'll have to confiscate this knife and investigate the matter further." My USB drive, now labeled a dangerous weapon, was locked away in the principal's office safe. I couldn't believe I was caught in this absurd situation over a simple flash drive. Days dragged on, and the USB incident became the talk of the school. Karen reveled in her role as the heroic teacher who thwarted a potential catastrophe. My classmates, bewildered but entertained, found humor in the whole debacle. As the investigation unfolded, it became evident that my USB drive was nothing more than that, a USB drive. Yet Karen refused to back down. She clung to her narrative, insisting that she had saved the school from a supposed threat. Mr. Johnson called me into his office to return the USB drive. "Karen overreacted, but I hope you understand we take these matters seriously," he said, trying to sound stern but failing to hide a hint of amusement. "Yeah, sure. Next time I'll bring my documents in a safer format," I replied, still frustrated with the absurdity of the situation. In the end, the USB incident faded into the annals of school lore, but Karen's reputation as the overzealous teacher endured. Students whispered about her exaggerated heroics, and eye rolls were abundant whenever her name surfaced. However, my USB drive suffered the worst fate. When I retrieved it from the principal's office, it was covered in sticky notes proclaiming it a dangerous weapon. The once sleek black surface was marred by crude drawings of knives, turning my essential tool into a repulsive mockery. As I looked at the defaced USB drive, I couldn't help but wonder if Karen's stubbornness and penchant for drama were more dangerous than any imaginary threat I could pose with a harmless flash drive. High school indeed was full of unexpected lessons. OMG, this story had me in stitches. Can't believe Karen mistook a USB drive for a knife. High school drama at its finest. Who else thinks Karen needs a reality check? Here's a story of misplaced trust, family dynamics, and a quest to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Little did I know that a simple request would unravel a tangled web of emotions and secrets. Here's how it all went down. My children take very good care of their toys and possessions. As it is nearing Christmas, they have chosen old toys to donate, keep, and some that they weren't quite ready to part with yet. My in-laws don't have many toys at their home and have said they need to get more for their toy closet for all the grandchildren. My eldest suggested that they bring the toys to their grandparents for the toy closet. This way they could still play with them, see them when they wanted, and bonus, all their cousins could play with them too. My in-laws were excited and thanked them for donating to the toy closet. The first time we saw the kids' cousins, they were excited to show them the toys, and they all had fun playing together. Cut to a couple of months later when we stopped over and they were all gone. My kids asked Grandma and Grandpa what happened, and they weren't sure. They texted my sister-in-law and she said, "Sorry, they were really nice and my kids liked them, so we decided to bring them all home with us." My mother-in-law asked if they were bringing them back for their toy closet, and she wrote back simply saying no. My kids are kind of hurt as they weren't ready to give them up yet, and they wanted to be able to share and play at their grandparents' house. So 1. Would I be a jerk if I wrote and asked my sister-in-law to please bring the community toys back? For additional info, my in-laws are afraid to anger my sister-in-law because she is very easy to hold a grudge. So this conversation would fall on myself and or my husband, who also feels the same way. He actually suggested we ask on here. We might be the jerks if we do this. Let's ask Reddit first. Also, their kids have plenty of toys at home, so it's not like they don't have anything to play with. Also, there are multiple families who come to their home with kids, not just our family and this particular brother-in-law's family. My husband has 4 other siblings with kids. We spoke to my mother and father-in-law, and my husband told them he didn't like that they were too afraid to say anything. My mother-in-law said that she was afraid since my sister-in-law is very quick to go no contact with people. She seems to get sick of people in her life easily and cuts them out when she gets offended. My mother-in-law is afraid to not see her grandchildren. I understand the fear, but it's still not right. I asked them if they at all offered, even inadvertently, for her kids to take the toys we left. They said definitely not, and I believe them. My husband called my brother-in-law and said, thanks to those who suggested this, "Hey, we were just over at Mom and Dad's, and there seems to have been some confusion. Our kids left some toys there to store and for all the grandchildren to share, and I think your wife thought we wanted to get rid of them. Total miscommunication, sorry about that. We're headed to the area and can swing by now to grab them." My brother-in-law said that was fine, and he didn't even know they had them. So we swung by, he found them, and helped us pack them all in the trunk. My sister-in-law was getting ready and came out as we were packing up. Her face got red, and she turned around and went back into the house. We stood out for a while talking to my brother-in-law until he checked his phone. He said he had to get inside, and he went in to talk to his wife. We could hear through the walls that she was yelling and crying. After 10 minutes of extremely awkward looks between my husband and me, we texted him that we were going to head out, and he came back out looking upset. He said his wife was crying inside and that she kept trying to go back and forth with why she had the toys, and he was confused. We just played dumb and said that our kids couldn't find the toys we left when we went back, and we were told that you guys had possibly accidentally taken them. He said he was sorry, and we said our goodbyes and left. My sister-in-law has since been posting about how family isn't blood and how she doesn't know who to trust anymore. I'm sure it will blow over one day. We also spoke with our children about how kind they were to want to share with their cousins, that we are a kind and giving family, but that doesn't mean that we let people take advantage of our kindness. That we understood that these were given to stay at Grandma and Grandpa's, and how upsetting it was that they weren't there, but that it was maybe a misunderstanding, and Mom and Dad got them back now. I think they are too young now, but one day, they will realize how their aunt is. Thank you all for suggesting that we stand up for our kids. The story emphasizes the significance of setting boundaries and being assertive when necessary. It's important to stand up for yourself and your family, ensuring that your needs and concerns are addressed respectfully. I thought our relationship was nearly perfect until I stumbled upon a secret that shattered my trust. Little did I know that confronting him would lead to a series of shocking revelations and a week of agonizing silence. As the tension reached its peak, I finally mustered the courage to confront him face to face. Here's how it all went down. My boyfriend Ben, 28 years old, and I, 25 years old, have been dating for almost 2 years. While our relationship is not perfect, it's pretty close. Our biggest disagreement was when I switched oat milk brands, and he kept forgetting and bringing the other brand. We're both naturally calm people, and prefer constructive discussions over heated arguments. This is why what happened last week caught me off guard. Towards the beginning of our relationship, when we weren't exclusive, Ben had a fling with a coworker. Let's call her Steph. He is the head of IT at a major firm, and she works in a different department, so they only see each other occasionally, especially now that he switched to remote work 2 days a week. When he told me about their fling and I talked to my friends about it, they said I wasn't allowed to be bothered about it as our relationship wasn't defined at the time and they only slept together once. Sometimes I will fixate on it and wonder if he talked to Steph at work and if she still has feelings for him. I know I'm not allowed to monitor his interactions with anyone and would never try to control him, but it does make me feel something when I think about him being near her. I don't know if it's jealousy or insecurity or if it's even rational. Anyway, last week we got invited to a dinner party hosted by his boss. I had been to a couple of his office parties before, but only interacted with a few people and usually stuck by Ben's side all night since I am a bit of an introvert. From my immediate impression, Ben's boss is a bit of a jerk, but he knew how to throw a good enough party that I began to loosen up and interact with more than 2 people all night. As a teacher, I've always felt insecure around people who make so much more money than me, and always felt like they looked down on me. But that couldn't have been further from the truth. I was immediately included in the inside jokes, made a couple of my own, and even got invited to a double date with one of Ben's coworkers and his wife. While Ben was getting me some food, one of his friends made a passing comment about Steph. She was at the party but stayed away from the group we were hanging out with. I said, I don't care about her, but I also have nothing to talk to her about, which is true. I wasn't about to compare notes with her, and the fact that she stayed away from us put me at ease and made me less wary of her. His friend laughed and said, well then, you might feel the same way about Molly. Molly was another coworker of Ben's who I had actually gotten along with the whole night. I was confused and didn't understand what he was trying to say. When he saw my reaction, he completely clammed up, but I demanded he explain himself. Another one of his friends from the group said that Molly and Ben slept together. To say I was shocked is an understatement. I then asked how many other girls Ben had slept with from the office, and they told me they knew of 4 different girls. At that point, Ben came back, unaware that his friends had spilled his secrets but picked up on the tense atmosphere. Internally, I was fuming and hurt, but I kept a cool facade. When Ben asked what was wrong, I just looked at him and said, your friends were just informing me that you're involved with multiple coworkers. He looked shocked, and I left to go to the bathroom to calm down. I knew if I stayed at this party any longer, I would have a breakdown and needed to leave. So I went straight to our car and drove home without telling him. When I got back home, I replied to his numerous texts about where I was and told him I came home and he could find his own way back. He got home around an hour after me, and by that time I had already cried my feelings out and was ready to have a conversation. He came into the house absolutely livid, which I didn't understand because he was the one who kept this information from me. He's never even raised his voice at me for anything before, but he was shouting about how I embarrassed him, and word had gotten around to his other coworkers because I reacted immaturely. I tried to explain my position, asking how he would feel if he found out I had been involved with multiple coworkers and never told him. He just kept reiterating that he never had a romantic relationship with them, and it was only physical. I knew going into our relationship that he was more sexually experienced than me, but I refused to believe he could be intimate with these women and not feel any emotional connection. But that is beside the point. He should have told me. However, all he is hung up on is that I insulted him to his friends. When he was done yelling, he said he was going to stay at his brother's house to calm down and not to contact him until he cooled down. I told him I wouldn't contact him first because I don't believe I am in the wrong. It's been a week since he's been at his brother's house and we still haven't talked. I have no clue where we go from here. Was I wrong to react the way I did? I didn't think I was, but now I'm second-guessing myself. I didn't think calling him out on his involvement with multiple coworkers would elicit this reaction, but I don't think it was a lie either. Should I apologize or wait for him to make the first move? My issue is not so much with him being intimate with other women, but rather with him hiding it. I just need to clarify a few things. We had discussed previous partners, but he omitted one-night stands as he didn't consider them partners. He only told me about girlfriends he had. Ben is my first boyfriend, and I had only ever slept with one guy before. However, that man wasn't my boyfriend either, but I still disclosed it. There is some speculation that I went through his phone and badgered him about Steph, but that is not true at all. I knew my issues with Steph were my own, and I never made him answer for them. Even when he told me, I was slightly upset, but again, it was something we discussed, and I sought advice from my friends on how to move forward. I did not yell out the comment I made. It was only in front of Ben and 2 of his work friends. I did not ask his friends who the other 2 girls were, as I thought that should come from Ben. I don't know when the encounters with the other 3 girls happened. I am aware that my comment was wrong, and I'm fully ready to apologize for that, and for leaving him stranded. He had to get a lift from his brother. In my post, I wrote our car, but that's not true. I just think of it that way because I use it more, but it's actually his car. Anyway, I texted him this morning saying, hey, I know you asked me not to contact you first, but I've given you a week and really feel like we need to have a conversation. I hope you've been doing okay. I didn't want to start apologizing or questioning him over text. I sent that message around 6:30 before I left for work, and I was teaching all day, so I knew I wouldn't be able to constantly check my phone. It's lunchtime right now, and he's responded, saying he's at work, which is confusing because Friday and Monday are his remote work days, so I don't understand why he's gone in. I texted back and said, we can talk after work if he wanted to come home, and he agreed. I honestly have no clue how tonight is going to go. I really don't want to break up. I know a lot of you are going to say I don't have a backbone for messaging him first, but I haven't been able to eat or sleep all week, and this has been so mentally and physically exhausting. My workload this week has been crushing, and this added stress has made me reach my limit. So I was quite nervous about Ben coming over after work. I was meant to do some work but was too distracted to even attempt it. However, as a gesture of goodwill, I decided to cook his favorite meal for him and maybe use it as an icebreaker. I did take someone's advice of writing everything down just so I could keep my thoughts clear. After work, I texted asking him what time he would be over, and he said he'd text me when he left work. It takes him about 30 minutes on the tube to reach home. He arrived at around 6-ish and rang the doorbell, which was so weird because he still had his keys. I opened the door and we awkwardly greeted each other. My immediate impression was that he didn't look angry or upset, just cold. I sat down on the sofa and expected him to join me, but he just stood in the middle of the room with his hands in his trousers. I said I was glad he came over, and he just nodded. Then I mentioned that it was weird being in his house by myself all week, and all he said was, "I'm sure it was." He asked me why I texted him now and not sooner, and I explained that he had told me not to contact him. I told him I had been miserable and that I was sorry for the comment I made and leaving, especially for taking his car. He said he didn't care about the car, just that I had left without telling him. I finally got a chance to explain myself to him. I never cared how many women he slept with before. I had known he was a bit promiscuous before we got together, and I never held it against him. What bothered me was being blindsided and feeling like I knew less about my boyfriend than some random coworkers. I asked why he didn't just tell me since he knew I'd be around them, and he said he honestly didn't think it was important and would matter to me. I called him out on that because he knows my personality, and he knew it would matter. He admitted that he regretted sleeping with those women as he never thought about having to bring his future girlfriend around them and tell her about it. 2 of the encounters happened when he first joined the company straight out of university. One of those girls has already left, and the other is actually dating one of Ben's friends who told me about Molly. He shared that, at that point in his life, he was fine with casual encounters and never really thought about the consequences. I asked why his friend decided to even say anything to me about it, and he said they always try to push each other's buttons. And one thing that annoys Ben is when someone brings up his past behavior. He mentioned that after I left, his friends felt bad for what they said, but I made it clear that I wouldn't have reacted that way if I had known, and he should have told me. He accused me of trying to justify my response after apologizing. I told him I didn't want to do that. I genuinely believe that what I said and did was wrong, but he can't put all the blame on me. He said the only thing he could apologize for is sleeping with multiple women, and since that was before me, it didn't make any sense. I kept emphasizing that it was the hiding part that upset me, and he asked what difference it would have made if I had known. I did think about that for a moment. I still would have gone to the party, but I think I would have been a bit more cautious around Molly and the other girl. He said he wanted me to be there and have a good time, and he didn't want to ruin it by telling me about irrelevant things from his past. I guess I understood that sentiment, so I decided to let it go. We both sat there silently for a moment, and he asked if I was done, and if I was going to end the relationship, then I needed to come up with another reason because this would be the stupidest reason. I assured him that I didn't want to break up and that we needed to talk about everything, but I wanted him to come sit next to me. He agreed, so I asked if there were any others, and he said no. I asked him who in the office knew about it, and he said only his friend group, and they keep their mouths shut because all of them were doing the same things. He admitted that he slept with Molly right before we met. I was curious about why he went into work today when it was his remote work day, and he explained that his nieces wouldn't let him concentrate at home, so he decided to go in. He also shared that he was furious last week and didn't know if he could move forward, but talking to his brother helped calm him down. He mentioned that if I hadn't texted him, he was planning on contacting me today anyway so we could talk, so we didn't break up. I apologized, and while he didn't do the same, I've decided to let it go and move on. I told him I made his favorite meal, and he finally kissed me and told me he missed me. Anyway, I know some of you might say he should have ended the relationship immediately, or I should have demanded an apology, but I'm happy with the outcome. I finally had a meal and a good night's sleep. Even Ben said I looked like I had lost weight. When mistakes are made, it is important to take responsibility, apologize sincerely, and learn from them. Forgiveness and letting go of grudges help in moving forward and rebuilding trust. I never thought my attempt to prove a point would lead to such devastating consequences. I humiliated and shattered my girlfriend's confidence. That's the title of this haunting tale. Little did I know my actions would set off a chain of events that would change our lives forever. Here's how it all went down. My girlfriend and I moved in together last year. We live in a fairly safe neighborhood, but during the night there are some sketchy drunk men hanging around who also scare me, honestly. However, my girlfriend wasn't really scared to walk alone at night and would say that she's just as strong as those men and can take care of herself. My girlfriend is 5'10" and works out twice a week. She is indeed very strong compared to most women, but she was obviously mistaken to think that her strength was comparable to that of an average man. She even went as far as saying that if someone should be worried about walking alone at night, it should be me, as I'm a scrawny 5'9" man. I thought this was one of those situations where it would be better to just stay quiet rather than being correct, so I mostly stopped expressing my concerns to her. Yesterday, she went out with some of her friends and called me at 1 a.m. to inform me that she would come home alone using public transportation since she doesn't have a license. I told her that it's dangerous, and I should come pick her up, but she insisted on coming by herself. I couldn't sleep until she arrived home an hour later. She was angry at me for not trusting her ability to take care of herself. That's when I decided to demonstrate to her the difference in strength between men and women. At first, she thought I was joking, but when she realized I was serious, she gladly took the opportunity to prove me wrong. I asked her to hold me down as hard as she could, and then I quickly freed myself and held her down for several minutes until she surrendered. She cried a lot during this whole incident, and I could also see the fear in her eyes. Although she knew very well that I would never hurt her, I humiliated her. I slept on the couch that night. She didn't want to discuss it in the morning and said she's fine, but it's obvious that she's still very upset about it. I feel terrible for shattering her confidence like that, and I don't think she will ever feel safe walking alone at night again. I probably acted like a jerk, and I wish I had trusted her more to take care of herself. I know this relationship is probably over, but is there anything I could do to make up for it? It's been 2.5 months, and I thought it would be appropriate to give you an update after some recent events. I actually already tried to do an update a few days later, but I was such a wreck mentally and deleted it shortly after. So I'll get straight to the point. She broke up with me the next day over the phone. She wanted me to admit that I enjoyed seeing her cry, but I kept defending myself until she gave up. But deep down I knew that she was right. I'm not ashamed to say now that I was a bit aroused by overpowering her so easily and seeing her cry. I know how horrible it sounds, and I'm definitely not proud of it. But I think that acknowledging my flaws and being open about them is the first step in overcoming them. The next few days after the breakup were probably some of the worst days in my life. I thought that I've lost everything, including my self-respect. I decided to go to therapy and take a break from dating for the foreseeable future. Luckily, I also had the support of my family and close friends, even if they didn't fully agree with my actions. For those of you who say that she needed a reality check, I have to disagree with you on this one. Yes, she overestimated her strength, but she's not dumb enough to actually engage in a fight with a stranger, let alone a drunk man. Being cautious has nothing to do with strength, and now I believe that she was also right to get a bit mad at me for having little to no faith in her. Trying to demonstrate how much stronger I was at 2 a.m. was just plain stupid though. I haven't heard from my ex until she gave me a call 2 days ago. We barely talked about the incident though. It was mostly just catching up and making peace with each other. She's doing pretty great actually. She's about to graduate with her master's and already has a job lined up. She started dating a new guy last month, and I can tell by the way she talked that she's very into him. She signed up for a swing class, which is something that she wanted to do for the longest time, but didn't do it because of me, which is also where she met her new boyfriend. What she didn't do, however, is to sign up for a self-defense class, which honestly, I kind of expected. Overall, I was glad to hear how happy she sounded. I'm also doing pretty good myself, although I'm still on my break from dating, and I don't see myself getting into another relationship for at least a year. Last month, I also got to experience how my ex felt when I was overly worried for her safety. I went with my family on a trip to Naples, and while we had our apartment in a fairly safe part of the city, it was just a few blocks away from some sketchy alleys during the night. So when I craved a good pizza in a specific place during one of the nights there, my mom got very vocal about not wanting me to go to that place because of how sketchy some of the alleys on the way there looked like. I tried to convince her that she has nothing to worry about but to no avail, and then it dawned on me that this is probably how my ex felt when I expressed my concerns to her. Eventually, I decided to go to that place the next day during daytime instead. It was definitely worth it though. I'm genuinely happy with how things went for both of us, although I still miss her sometimes, and hearing her voice again just made me miss her even more. But I know that it would probably be better for us to just move on with our lives separately. I also plan to continue with my therapy sessions, even though I feel completely fine by now. The reason is very simple. It's just to have someone that I can talk to without feeling judged. Reddit isn't really the best place for that, as you could probably tell from my original post, but I still want to thank everyone who commented and gave their opinion. Respecting boundaries is essential in maintaining healthy relationships. Each person has their own comfort levels and limitations, and it is vital to acknowledge and respect them. Pushing someone beyond their boundaries, as demonstrated in the story, can cause emotional harm and damage the trust within the relationship. I never thought choosing a wedding date would lead to such turmoil, but here I am, questioning if I'm a jerk for my decision. As the days count down to my big day, tensions rise with my sister, and a series of hurtful messages only deepen the divide between us. It's a battle of pride and resentment, and with each passing moment, I wonder if our relationship will ever be the same. Here's how it all went down. I am getting married soon. On January 1st of this year, I announced to my mother and sister the date of my wedding. 11/11ths. I wanted a fall wedding, the leaves to be changing, and to be cool outside. We chose November. With the holidays and whatnot, there were only 2 Saturdays in November that made sense. My fiancé chose the 11th because it's indicative of our dating anniversary. So it was decided, 11/11ths. I announced the date to my family. My sister became upset. Her favorite band sings a song that's called 11/11, so she has it tattooed on her. She was engaged to some guy like 15 years ago. They didn't get married, but they were supposed to get married on 11/11. I had completely forgotten. It's a week before her wedding anniversary. She was upset because 11/11 is her thing, and it felt like a slap in the face that I would get married a week before she did years ago. My sister and I have a tumultuous relationship. The last fight we got into was at my birthday 2 years ago. We had discussed having a family dinner, but I ended up inviting some friends. My fiancé wanted it to be special, and about 12 people ended up being there. My sister was upset because if she had known there were going to be other people there, she wouldn't have come because she didn't feel well. I told her she was never obligated to come, and I didn't think I needed to make her aware of the guest list. Anyway, we ended up not talking for a while, but because my sister is stubborn, she has never apologized, doesn't take blame, I eventually just let it go, to appease my mother. So, when I found out she was upset about the date I chose for my wedding, I wasn't having it. I worked really hard the last several years to establish boundaries with family and friends, and to not be steamrolled. I was hurt my sister made my wedding about her. She told me that I took her thing, and as a result, she wasn't going to be in the country for my wedding. She booked a trip. It's now been 10 months. Her and I have had limited interaction. My mom says to start the conversation with my sister and to let things go because we all know how your sister can be. Mom said I should have asked my sister first if it was okay to choose that day, and I could have approached the subject delicately. This was mind-blowing to me because my mother and I have to walk on eggshells with my sister. Over the year, they've discussed how I could have done things differently, or why it couldn't have been this day or that day. My wedding is 2 weeks away, and my sister and I haven't talked. I didn't send her an invite because she has not apologized and already said she wouldn't be going. I see no reason to have to initiate the conversation like always, strengthening the pattern of letting her get her way. It has been heartbreaking to not have my sister there for my activities, and it hurts to know that her pride got in the way of spending time with me. But for once in my life, I want to stand strong and say I deserve better. The day before my wedding, Friday the 10th, my mother came over to my house to help me put some last-minute things together. She texted my sister when she arrived saying, "Just got to your sister's, talk to you later." My sister responded with, "Have fun lolol," and followed it up with another text saying, "Dumb wedding." Coincidentally, my mother was showing me something on her phone when my sister texted that. My sister tried to immediately delete, which is something I guess iPhones can do to each other. I gave my mom back her phone, and at this point, I'm so angry I can't sit. I'm pacing around the house. Since the dumb wedding message had disappeared, my mother almost didn't believe it happened. She texted my sister and asked if she said that. My sister admitted it. My mother asked why she would say something like that and that I saw it. My sister's response was "Welp." Then she wanted to know how I saw it. My anger has turned into sadness and I started crying. I told my mother that it was unfair to be treated this way by my sister, who is close to 40. My mother told my sister I was very upset and said to stop acting silly. The entire day I spent in a funk. Years of trauma and abuse make me susceptible to other people's emotions and thoughts, and I have a hard time snapping out of it. Not just family, but a horribly messed up first marriage. I'm also trying to rack my brain and figure out genuinely why I deserve this. At one point, we were at the venue with my mother-in-law who asked me what was wrong. My mother interrupted and said I was tired and winked at me. Later I told my mother-in-law the truth. I'm not ashamed or embarrassed, and I'm not going to lie to protect my sister. When my mother and sister spoke later that night, my sister tried to change her story. She said that I took it wrong and she meant expensive weddings are dumb, but she has no idea how much money I've spent on the wedding or any of the details. And come on, if that's what she meant, she would have clarified immediately. My mother seemed to sort of believe her excuse. The wedding day came, and I never heard from my sister. The wedding was gorgeous, and I'm honestly relieved she wasn't there. Extended family came into town, and my sister scheduled dinner with them the day before the wedding to make sure she could see them, which annoyed me. It's been over a week, and I still haven't heard from her. It further cements my decision to cut things off and not relent because she knew I was upset and crying about what she said, and she still couldn't reach out to me to set things straight. Sadly, my mother did tell her about some of the details of the wedding. She claims she didn't send any pictures. I was upset because I clearly told Mom not to give any info about it. But it is what it is. Choosing a wedding date can sometimes lead to unexpected conflicts and tensions among family members. It is important to communicate openly and considerately about the decision, taking into account the feelings and significance of certain dates to others. Setting boundaries and standing up for oneself is essential, but it is also important to strive for understanding and reconciliation when possible. Ultimately, each individual deserves to feel supported and respected during their special moments, and maintaining healthy relationships with loved ones is crucial. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now or you're definitely the jerk.